And we are live, not just recording, but live streaming. So if you haven't joined our streams before, jump into our Facebook group and join us in the future. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio, broadcasting live on all channels. We're excited to be here. This is going to be a fun episode and a little bit of a doomer of an episode because we're going to go into some survival scenarios. We're going to use a deck of cards from our good friends over at Conflicted, the card game. I'll hold up a stack right here. This is the Ready Man version. Shane's got which deck is that?
Desolation deck number 5.
Dun dun dun.
Desolation.
Nice.
Harris has got one of the original decks in his hands.
Yeah, this is the guy. This is the first one I think they did.
Yeah, the plastic case. I got a few of those.
Yeah.
Sweet. So
I got this other one. I don't know what this one is. I don't know if you can see it.
I can't. It's the green screens.
Is that a different brand?
One.
Or is that a different brand?
It's Conflicted.
No, is it a Conflicted one? I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
That's one of their first rounds of cards in the plastic shells.
Oh, it's just quotes from this one is like quotes from different leaders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like patriotic stuff.
I do happen to have that one as well.
Cool. Yeah, I don't have that one.
Well, the key for today is we're going to try to get some involvement from our friends in TikTok land, Facebook land, and actually we are also live on our YouTube. So if you guys want to hop on our YouTube out there, every Thursday 6 p.m. Mountain Time, unless there's a disaster, we're going to be online. So without further ado, who's going to go with the first of the insanity?
I guess you can pick, Scott.
I get to pick which one of you is going to go first. All right, Shane, you're going first.
All right, I figure you'd do that to me. All right, here's a topic. I know. I was asking for it, right? So there's a topic that we've talked about this a little bit, and it seems to be talked about in the media. I think it's maybe being stirred up. Oh, there's going to be civil war, right? I don't know about that. I don't think there are enough people on the left in particular that have the cojones to step up and do that, right? I mean, that's the main thing. Yeah, with the people, some of the right, I'm using right and left very loosely here, right? It's not just, I don't know that anybody really has the mentality to actually start a civil war, Maybe it's a Cold War. And I would argue, yeah, maybe we're already in a cold civil war. Anyway, here's a card. This is the 10 of Spades from the Desolation deck. How close is your country to a civil war? I think that's something we could probably take a whole episode and talk about, right? What would trigger it and why? So that is a big question for me. Do you want me to go ahead and answer that, Scott, or do you guys want to chime in on that?
Go for it.
Yeah, say a few things and then we'll all chime in.
Cool. I think if you listen to the media that we're spewing out this kind of garbage, that we are close to a civil war, right? But like I was saying, I don't know that there are many that really understand what that would be like, especially if you're comparing it to the original Civil War here in the United States. And I think it's far too ugly for me to even comprehend what that would be like. But is there a lot of strife out there? Yes. Is there a lot of contempt for your brothers and sisters? Yes, there is. So maybe there is something civil strife between us. To call it a war, I don't know. But I think what would trigger it, I think maybe we've already seen some of those things that have triggered it. The abortion topic, right? That could be one. The firearms thing, depending on what this administration does, right? What laws, right, are passed, and I do laws very loosely in quotation marks because if it's immoral, then it's not a law. I'm not going to follow it, right? So I think those are a few things that could potentially trigger a civil war, and again, I use that very loosely. Strife, infighting between us, which I think is already happening. You look back at the Cold War era, they still call it a war, and cyber war is still a war, right? We have been at war with Russia and China, all these countries for many years. We don't know what's going on in the back, behind the scenes, but that it is still a war. So maybe it's a change of mentality of being willing to step up and fight, of having knowing where your limits are, what morals you're going to stand up for, and what are worth fighting for, right?
I think that any kind of divisive activity that's happening could eventually lead to a civil war. We've got blacks against whites. We've got immigrants against natives. We've got men against women. We've got this abortion. The federal government took away the abortion law and it gave it back to the states. It didn't say that it couldn't happen. It didn't say anything about taking. It wasn't anything about removing the option for this. It was giving it back to the power to the states, where the states have the power anyways and should always have the power. So this is, to me, that's an example of, okay, wait a minute. Now we might have states fighting against states because some states want to have this law and want to allow for abortion at certain terms or whatever, and other states say no or not till a certain time frame or whatever. And you're going to have now people moving to different states or going to different states. So there's a potential for anything that divides people who are saying, well, Second Amendment rights versus, gun control versus let us have the freedom to have our own guns. Anything and everything that divides or anything that could divide the people is something that could spark. It could be that flame that ignites that civil war. I was listening to the Constitution. There's a great course on the Constitution and what led the people to really develop the Revolutionary War. A lot of those things leading into that are some of the same environmental things, political things. The political environment is some of the same stuff we're seeing today. So is our country close to a civil war? I think it's as close as it's ever going to be without having one and actually being in one. And could something trigger it? Sure. It's actually in the scriptures. The scriptures talk about there'll be a civil war at some point. Is it right now? Is it next week? Is it next year? I don't know, but we've got a lot of divisiveness, and that's why it's so important for us to come together as a community.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
We've got a couple people that actually commented on this. Armadillo Physics, he's saying it's a mess. There's too many sides, so he doesn't think it'll ever equal a civil war. And that's a pretty good point. Jester saying hi. Emma Maiden saying, you want one? No, we don't want one. The question, we're going through a card deck. You guys may have seen these before. It's Conflicted, the card deck. It's apocalypse games. But we're asking questions, and one of them is, do you think we're close to or that the environment that we're in could trigger one? So that's one of the questions we're going through. We're going to pull a bunch of different random questions off these cards, and that's how we're going to make our topic and our showcase for the day.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask yourself hard questions, even if it may not be a possibility at all. I think it gets your mind working, asking critical questions about these types of things. Like, will it ever happen? Yeah, probably not. I don't know. But like Per says, according to the scriptures, yes. So some sort of civil war, maybe, depends on how you picture it. Is it a shooting war or whatever? But I think another answer to that question may be, all this inequality. We know that the elite are dividing us between the elite, the ultra rich, and the poor. I mean, they're turning us into serfs, getting rid of the middle class, and that is inequality of people to those who have and those who don't have will definitely cause issues. I mean, look at other countries. What's happening right now? There are riots all over the world because of lack of food, lack of this, energy, gas, fuel. Look at Sri Lanka. It's everything. It's a mess. A lot of countries are a mess right now. Would you call that civil war? It's I don't know, but I think that's another thing could easily contribute to that.
Well, I think one of the things we're also seeing is there's a digital war going on, right? We're already experiencing digital wars going on between countries, between sides, and it's all being pushed by, again, the political elites. The other thing is we need to learn how to be. First of all, we need to learn how to shut our mouth. If it's not important, don't enrage somebody else if you don't need to. We need to learn how to de-escalate. I think that's one of the best plans anyone can, and best skills anyone can add to their skill sets in communications is learn the art of de-escalation, because people like to argue and people don't want to listen as much as they used to. And it's better to be alive than right
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to an argument. Having been right and done nothing wrong and suffered consequences because of wrong people, you know, it's led me to understand that there are times to stand up and fight, and there are times to de-escalate. And most of the time, de-escalation is better, because once you get that de-escalation going, once you bring them down from their anger and their hostility, then you can start having conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can start educating each other and learning.
Finding common ground.
Yeah. And it's like, and like Zen, he's like, at this point, I don't care about right versus alive after that, after what was done. You know, everyone has a different perspective. Like that, Leo, I feel like I walked into the church and the preacher's talking to me. You know, what I'm trying to make the point of is that we've got to argue less and discuss more. Like, not argue. Arguing is great. Arguing is fantastic because you're expressing opinions and viewpoints. But fighting, turning it into verbal fights, that's where we need to be wiser about how we communicate, who we communicate with, what we will talk to them about. Because there comes a point where you're just casting pearls before swine, and it's not going to do any good for anybody. Right? Too many people don't want to de-escalate. That's exactly right, M. Aiden. Like, too many people just don't want to de-escalate, and it will solve so many problems.
Yeah, Utah Mike on YouTube says the same thing. He says some are just too mad to even listen.
Yeah,
and that's legit. And that's what sometimes you just got to walk away.
Yep. That's when it pays to be kind of go gray man and be like, oh, I can. Well, yeah. there was an app or a filter on TikTok a while ago, and it was the Homer Simpson filter where he can like go backwards and into the bushes.
Yeah,
it made it so we could do that, and I was just like, oh, that's so true. Like, we just back out of here, and and it's so much easier on your life, and in so many ways, to just not get in arguments with idiots.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a thing we see a lot right now is people, and I won't get specific, forcing their beliefs on others, right? Mm-hmm. What does that matter, right? I mean, we because of our moral standards, we believe certain things in that, we have the right to choose. Yes, we can teach others with kindness, with love, with it by example. But to try and push your beliefs on others is absolutely wrong. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, people trying to justify their own behavior by pushing that on others, which is causing a lot of contention, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can even make, Utah Mike makes the point, you could make yourself the idiot when you're going into a conversation to try to escalate or to argue or to prove yourself right. And what we want to do is just be conscious of who we're talking to, what we're talking about, and a better way to go about it sometimes doesn't exist. But
what's that old saying? It's better to keep your mouth closed and be perceived as a wise man than to open your mouth and remove all doubt that you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. Then open your mouth and put your foot in it, right?
Exactly. Awesome.
Another thing, in our last recorded podcast, we talked about being aware of what's going on in the world. And I don't know if anybody saw this, but I did. It's that the New York did a public service announcement where they said, if there's a nuclear attack, do the following things. And everybody's like, what? Wait a minute. Why is what's going on that New York would feel prompted to all of a sudden put out a PSA about a nuclear attack and what to do in the event of a nuclear attack? And then you got Putin dealing, going in to talk to, who was it that he met with? Like somebody in the Middle East. He just met with somebody, and they're like, I actually watched it on SW Prepper on TikTok. I was watching one of his he was talking about how Putin and some of these other leaders were meeting together over there and how it kind of matches up with some of the biblical prophecies. And it's like, come on, people, we got to pay attention. And not only is there civil war potential, but we're looking at world war, and it's in there. That's also in the scriptures.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, do you ever, when you're going shopping, like you're going to Costco or wherever, are you looking at other people's carts and saying, "Oh, I can tell," they're just, they're, first of all, they're just barely getting by, right? They're buying the minimum, and then there's some people, it's like, okay, I know they're a prepper, right? They're buying stuff I know for their long-term storage, right?
And then you see the guy that's got all the electronics. You're like, oh,
exactly, yeah, exactly. So I'm very, I guess, judgmental that way, saying, I would love to talk to you and have some influence over you, but again, that's a tough process, right? To try and wake somebody up who's standing next to you. But it could be a fun conversation too. Is, hey, I see what you got in your cart there. Are you a prepper? And most of the times, like, what are you talking about? Like, they have no idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's another one of my cards here that I had picked out is the signs of an impending collapse have run rampant on the internet. I mean, and that's my warning I wanted to give out today, man. It's everywhere. You've been paying attention, and the collapse will begin tomorrow. Okay, that's not likely, right? It's going to begin tomorrow. But you are stocking up at a local big box store on last-minute preps that your family will need. While shopping, you notice all of the people around you, and you look into their baskets. No one is preparing for what will start tomorrow. Would you share your knowledge with others? Why or why not? Because everybody's asleep. No, because they don't know anything, right?
Sadly, at that point, I wouldn't. That's what I'm trying to do now before it gets to that point. And I've spent 8 years of my life now trying to educate people on all these platforms. Before that, I've been doing this since 2004, helping other people, trying to train them and teach them and help them get prepared. That's when I was an emergency preparedness coordinator for my church in Arizona. I was in a singles ward. It's just all single guys and gals trying to find love, right? And do you know how many people were interested in talking to me about preparedness when I was the ward emergency preparedness leader?
One or two, maybe.
The 3 girls that wanted to date me. They didn't want to date me because I was a prepper. I was thin and built, and I was athletic and fun, and I'm still fun, just not any of those other things. But nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
So did you guys participate in the runs to Costco to get toilet paper back in last year in 2020, right? Were you guys there trying to get a big thing of toilet paper, right? Did you see what people?
Nope.
Yeah, these huge giant pack. People stacking multiples on there at times and getting the sanitation wipes. So I think people, they have an idea when they see others doing that, right? I think they have an idea, but I think it takes more than just like you or me with a cart full of stuff, right? Getting ready for for the collapse. I think
it reminds me of a quote that I heard by a guy named Thomas S. Monson. He said, "When the time for decision arrives, the time for preparation is past."
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's collapsed tomorrow and I'm at the store filling up on my last minute stuff, I don't know who I can trust. Yeah. I'm not going to share my stuff with the guy next door to me in the grocery line, because I don't know if I can trust him. I don't know if he's going to be in that panic mode where he's just going to kill me and take my stuff or try to. And so if it's time for the decision, which is collapse is coming, it's already on us, it's tomorrow, whatever today, I'm sorry, but unless I know you, unless I trust you, unless I've already established a relationship with you, you're more than likely going to be on the outside of my.
But here's also, I guess, an argument to that too is, Parrish, where is this in the New Testament? If you've been warned, warn your neighbor, right? And I think most of the time I would risk looking like a crazy wacko, but there's got to be something to be said to say, hey, I'm standing in line next to somebody, so here's a little warning voice, right? Here's a little something to say, you might want to go grab a little more of this and see where that goes, right? See what, let it bounce off of them and see, okay, thanks, and then they ignore it. Okay, all right, I tried to say something, but there's always, I think, something to be said about trying to say something, even if you may look crazy.
Absolutely.
I think one that brings up a good question. So say there has been a collapse, there has been some major issues. You've been, let's say you bugged in for a long time. Someone shows up at your door, hungry. You've got enough food for your family for a few more days. Do you feed them and open your family to some potential danger, or do you turn them away?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard question too. Of course, the story that comes to mind is the widow of Zarephath, in the Old Testament, and where Isaiah goes to her and she's about to eat her last. Elijah, excuse me, goes to her and says, feed me first, make for me a cake first, right? And she did, and they ate for many days. The barrel of meal didn't waste, and the cruse of oil didn't fail. So I think there's a lot to be said about having faith, right, and having that kind of confidence in our Heavenly Father, in that if we're doing what's right and we're trying to take care of other people in addition to ourselves, and maybe it'll take food out of our mouths, maybe it'll take food out of our kids' mouths, but again, we kind of have to go by that inspiration that we receive to whether we help someone or not, because I think some people are deserving, and I hate to say that, some people are deserving and some people are not.
Well, there are going to be people that are going to try to steal from you, right? There are going to be groups that are going to send one person in pretending to be starving to then create a security issue to, hey, now we know these guys have food and come after you, right? There also might be a line created by you giving food to one person. They may go tell everybody else, hey, this guy still got food. And then they tell all their friends to line up. And so there could be other issues. And these are just some of the comments coming up. But I think what we have is right now, we have an opportunity for everyone to continue to prepare as best they can right now. If we don't, it's going to get, it's in some places, in some cases, it might be too late already, but we have to be thoughtful of everything we're doing, not just now, but in the future. If we come across a scenario like that, my goal is to always be able to feed somebody else if I need to, if I can. If I can't, then we're all in trouble. And Utah Mike brings up the point I was actually just about to go into, is the 10 virgins, right? In the parable of the 10 virgins, there were 5 who had oil and 5 who ran out of oil when it came time. When it came time for the bridegroom to come, you heard the commotion, the bridegroom cometh, and the 5 virgins that didn't have oil went to the 5 virgins that did and said, hey, share with us. And what did they say? They said, we can't. We don't have enough for us and you also. There will come a point in all of our lives where we just don't have enough to be able to give to anybody else. And a lot of us maybe have already had that happen in certain situations. But the parable is this. The Lord's been giving us a chance to prepare. He's telling us to prepare. Prophets throughout all the ages have told us to prepare. Looking at the signs and wonders, it's long been time that we should have been preparing. And what the point is what the point I'm trying to make is there isn't a situation where you're always going to be able to share. There's sometimes the Lord's going to give you a situation where it's just enough for you to get there because he wants you to get there, and he gave the other person already every option they can have.
Yeah, I think an aspect of this story that really stands out to me is that the bridegroom delayed his coming. He didn't come when he was supposed to, right? So all of us sit around here I'm ready. I've got what I need. At least I think I do. But he's not coming, so I guess it's not, being pessimistic. It's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So
going back to the story about Elijah, if you remember correctly, the chapters before that in Kings, it talks about how the God told Elijah, I have prepared someone in Zarephath for you. And so to know that is to see from the other side of it. The widow must have had some godly Holy Spirit guidance saying, hey, somebody's coming that's going to need this. And so you've got to remember that that's a critical part of this. If somebody knocks on the door and they open the door and you're and all of a sudden you just get this really foreboding feeling, trust your feelings. That's somebody, we don't have anything. Sorry. We just have enough for ourselves. We don't have anything to share. But if you open that door and it's somebody there and you just get a really good feeling of peace, trust that feeling too. Hey, come on in. I'll share with you what I can. That's something you got to be careful. You got to be careful with it. But that's something that I think is highly, we can trust our feelings and emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point.
All right, what's the next question we got on the?
All right, I've done 2, and you did 1, Scott. So I think Paris' turn.
All right, you want me to do one? Okay, this is kind of this is from the conflicted game, so I'm just going to read it. I just grabbed one out of the deck.
They can get pretty like rough,
Detailed.
So
Pretty dark. Yeah, no,
just so
absolutely.
the audience knows some of these questions are a little on the edge.
I'm not going to pick the human trafficker one, so I'm going to pick this one. The airplane you stole lost 30% of its power in midair, and it's about to crash. Your only hope is to make the small aircraft lighter. You and your 6 buddies have 5 minutes to decide who to dump out. Fuel and supplies have been dumped already. 2 of you need to go in order to make the airplane stable, but there are no parachutes. The 2 who need to leave the plane will suffer an excruciating fall to their deaths. How would you handle this situation and why?
Again, a very, very ridiculous question, but a good exercise, a good thought exercise, right?
Yeah.
I think at that point, it comes up to like we were saying in the previous comments, comes up to inspiration. Like, okay, I'm jumping, just like in the movies, right? You're hanging from the bottom of the rope. The rope's about to break. There's 3 of you on this rope, and the one at the bottom has to cut the rope and sacrifice themselves, right? I think that's where the decision has to be, right? Whoever is going has to make that decision for themselves. You can't say, what, I think you should go because I don't want to, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's the key. Is like you've got it. We're going to be facing so many questions that aren't normal life for us today.
Yeah.
Normal life for us today is get up, brush your teeth, take a shower, go to work.
What should I have for breakfast?
Yeah. What the real truth is, like, the things that we're doing today, the plans we're making today, the prayers we're praying today, the reading the scriptures, the workouts, physical activity, those things, growing a garden, those things are the things that are actually putting oil in our tanks for the future. So that it's easier for us to get through those tougher times.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think it's critical for
Beaming. She says single man first, right?
Yeah. No, it's true. Like, women and children last, right?
Titanic, save the women and children first.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also important to develop critical thinking skills. That's something that if a problem is presented and all you're thinking about is the problem, you're never going to survive. You're going to probably just sit and die. And so the first thing you got to do is learn how to problem solve. There's always a way to solve a problem. I mean, if any of you have ever watched MacGyver or any shows like MacGyver, there's always a way to fix it. All you need is duct tape and a paper clip and you can fix anything, right?
Yep. Some bubble gum, chewing gum.
And so a more realistic situation might be you have 5 bills come in and you only have enough money to pay 2 of them. Which 3 do you put off? That's a more realistic situation. Yeah. Or if in a preparedness situation, you have enough food for 3 days for 3 people and you have 5 people in your family. How do you ration it? Those are some questions that you got to think about, and it's critical thinking ahead of time is saying, okay, if you think of it, if it's again, going back to that quote, when the time for decision has arrived, the time for preparation is past. So thinking about these things mentally, and that's the thing about our mind. Our mind doesn't know the difference between something that we perceive or we create and something that's actually realistically happening. So if we can get ourselves in a situation of critically thinking about certain situations, we'll see things and we'll prepare ourselves so that when we are physically in that situation, it'll be much faster for us to find the solution.
Yeah. We've got questions that are coming up from the topics that we've been on. First, before we go too far, Mike asked, what happened to the virgins who did not share the oil with those who did not prepare? The virgins who didn't share the oil were accepted in and went with the bridegroom to the wedding feast. The other 5 ran around crazy looking for stuff and were not, when they got to the door when they finally found their way to there, they were told, "We know you not," and were sent away. Now, flip it again real quick. We're going to jump back into the TikTok feed, and we've got questions about the scenario. They feel like they need a little bit more information.
I think they're doing because they don't know it's a game, so they're like, "What's happened? How'd this happen?"
Mm-hmm.
All these are questions from just card games, conflicted card games. So, why was the plane acquired by nefarious means? We don't know.
Yeah.
I wish we had. If it were a book, I could tell you what happened in the prior chapter, but it's just a card with like 20 words on it.
Yeah, and
scenario. Yeah.
We got another question. Who stole the airplane in the first place? So on Facebook, that's awesome.
So does this mean I need to learn how to fly a plane? That should be on my
Yes.
list. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to start working on that.
Oh, this is awesome.
Another
You
person
guys are the
says,
best.
"Quit playing
You
games.
guys-
This is serious."
I know. You guys are
That's
awesome. Thanks for putting up with our shenanigans tonight. I think the bigger thing, like going back to, is like you've got to start planning now how you're going to make decisions in the future. Coming down to a situation where it's like, okay, we only have so much food left, and there's 4 of us in my family. You know, do we all eat less, or does someone starve?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and having that hindsight is make those preparations now. Make sure that doesn't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Work on your garden. Just get you adequate food storage for what you feel is going to happen. So,
both Minnie Haven and Marcy are like, I have more questions. Do I get to push somebody out? Like, I'm just saying, like, on
the plane scenario, I was thinking maybe we could take the seats out first before we kill somebody or send somebody go.
Throw out any dead weight you can get out of there. Like, you don't need everything.
Well, see, that's not the question. The question is they've already done all that stuff, right? It comes down to deciding the hard question, right?
Who do you kick out and why?
Read the card, for what it's worth, right?
True. I think it goes back to what somebody already said. People who don't have a lot of responsibility back home or something like that, they might be the ones to unfortunately go first. That's actually a plug for getting married and having kids, because you'll probably be the last guy to be thrown out of a plane because you have responsibilities and children to deal with, unless of course you're the Fantastic Four guy and you're looking at the Scarlet Witch in the second movie of the oh shoot, what's the darn
are you jumping into the
I'm not a superhero kind of guy.
The Marvel movie. Yeah, he's looking at this Fantastic Four guy's looking at it, and she says, "Do you have a wife?" Yeah, he says, "I have kids." "Do you have a wife?" "Good, then there'll be somebody to take care of them." I mean, you don't want to be in that situation.
No, that's true. That's true.
Doctor Strange. Sorry, the Doctor Strange 2 reference. Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I've not seen it.
Multiverse of madness.
Yeah.
Facebook user: the president of the United States, premier of Russia, smartest man in the world, and a Boy Scout were on a plane together, but they only had 3 parachutes. I bet you anything they're going to ask is who gets the parachute. I'm waiting for the rest of the question to come through.
Anyway, so you guys, if you haven't seen these conflicted decks, I think there are maybe a dozen of different decks, and I don't know if there's just 52 cards or what, but man, there are just tons of questions you guys can go through, and some of them are absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they got to come up with some content, right? But some are very thought provoking, and they typically have a theme, right? This is desolation, so I don't really know what the theme is for desolation. It's post-apocalyptic, right? But there are others based on books. There are others based on nuclear war and such. So they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool to, I've never really played it as a game, right? It's just always, we've used it for this type of scenario to talk amongst ourselves about what we would do. And really, I think it really shows how, people, maybe if you have a prepper group or a family, what their mindset is and how they would make decisions. So that, I think, would be a good game to play with those in your group to say, okay, I don't want you in my group. I want in my group, just the way they answer these questions.
Especially if they vote to throw you off the plane.
Exactly. Like, well, Shane, you've got a wife, you got, kids your kids are older. They can take care of themselves. I'm like, okay, well, you need the combination to my safe, first of all.
Yeah.
Well,
Make sure you get all that information before you throw them off.
Let me write it down.
Some of these actually don't even ask like a scenario question. It's more of what's your preference. Like, for example, when it comes to wilderness survival, what are your survival priorities and why?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if you don't know, then that's a good time to think about it, right?
First off, going back to your prioritization of time, it's survival rule of 3. Most of us aren't going to find ourselves underwater to start, but the brain can typically last without any damage for 3 minutes without oxygen. Then you jump into your body in inclement weather. You've got about 3 hours before you could die. It takes only 3 hours to kill you in inclement weather. Hypothermia can set in really fast and you're gone. Then you jump from that one So that's shelter. Then the next one is water. So we've already had 2 priorities before water. Water is super important, but you can go, 3 days on average without water. But how many people you talk to are talking about food first?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is.
Well, it's a hot topic right now, right? I mean, it's all over the news. The president's talking about it. So, so I think that's one of the reasons why, it says like, oh, food. But yeah, absolutely. You can go 30 days. You could go maybe even 50 days without food. It would suck.
There's groups that do intermittent fasting, and then after their session of intermittent fasting, they'll do a 40-day fast, and they'll drink water, but they won't eat anything for 40 days. And they prepare for that, and they get the mindset right to do that. A lot of us don't have the mindset to survive without water or food. Our body can actually outlast our mind. There's a story of a guy that was locked in a freezer. You guys may have heard about this story. This guy was locked in a freezer, and he was in there so long that he could start feeling himself die. And he went through, and he had the ability to write on the wall what was happening to him. And he explained the process of freezing to death as he died in that locked freezer. And
wow.
someone came back finally and opened the door, and he was already dead. But the freezer wasn't on. His mind believed the freezer was on and killed him.
Wow.
And he narrated his whole death. That's to tell you the power of your mind. Your mind can believe anything that it conceives. Right? And that can make or break your situation. So if you don't start practicing things now, if you don't start utilizing the mind tricks and the mind games and learn where your limits are now, it's going to be a lot harder in the scenario to survive those. Like, can you go? Have you tried fasting for 24 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Both food and water. Have you tried fasting for 48 hours? Both food and water. Try those things and see how your body reacts. See how your mind reacts.
Mm-hmm.
Because your mind's either going to be with you or against you. And most of the time, it's against us.
Yeah. 72-hour fasts are really powerful. They reset your whole system, and it's really good for you to do that every once in a while. I've done it a couple times. It's not fun, but it's definitely, it's powerful.
And then
I think you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah. And for those of you who medically can't do that, please do not try. Like, don't like, yeah, it's just don't. But also know your medical situation. So, hey, my situation is such that actually I can't go more than 8 hours without certain types of foods, right? Or medications or different things. Like, we need to know what our limits are before we get into the bad times so that we're prepared for them.
Yeah. How many hours can you stay awake without sleep? I mean, and what does that do to you? That's something interesting to learn about yourself as well.
Yeah. I've gone 2 days, full 48 hours with no sleep. I actually was at work once for 29 and a half hours straight on the clock. I was so tired. I was working for a moving company. I was so tired at the end of that. They, instead of me moving furniture, and this all happened because I was supposed to have a ride home for my first shift, and they ended up taking me to another location that I couldn't get my ride. And then from there, I was on with another moving crew at a commercial unit. And then they moved me to another unit and to another. So I ended up working with 4 different groups, all of them over an hour away from our main station. So I couldn't get home to get a ride to go home. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. So this is the funniest thing. I ended up in Boulder, Colorado, which is an hour and a half away. I don't know anybody that I know of up there. And all of our crews are going to go to the next job. And I'm standing in this big warehouse, and I was shrink wrapping pallets going around and around and around. And the forklift that's driving through there is propane powered. And every time it hits me with the exhaust, I'm just like, oh, getting wheezy and just getting dizzy. And I'm standing there waiting for him to come with another pallet of stuff, and I fall asleep standing.
Wow.
And I'm standing there leaning against this pallet of boxes that's about to get moved, drop my roll of shrink wrap on my toes, and wake up. And I'm like, oh, I'm asleep. And my boss sees me and he's like, hey, you need to, we're going to clock you out and you just need to go lay down somewhere. I'm like, someone's got to get me home. I'm like, what am I doing up here? I was supposed to be gone 20 hours ago. And he's like, I know, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like he'd actually come back from the day before. Like this is how long I'd been there. And this is horrible. It was like the worst day. And he hands me a phone. I call my mom. I'm 18 years old. I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck in this place. I don't know how to get, I don't have no ride to get home. I don't even know where the bus routes are. This is before we have cell phones, internet. Like, well, I didn't have cell phones. Cell phones were the big, huge bricks at the time. And my mom's like, oh, your dad happens to be up there working today. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is amazing. She calls my dad, who's at a friend's house. They're friends. I didn't know these people. The wife comes and picks me up, takes me back to her house. And then my dad's like, I need you to help me finish this deck so I can take you home. So I ended up spending another 6 hours trying to work with my dad. And again, fall asleep standing up.
And hopefully you learn something about yourself.
I learned that when I'm asleep, I have better balance than I have when I'm awake. But
oh, that's funny.
The biggest thing that I learned about is like you can actually go a lot farther than you realize, especially if you're staying on task and focusing on the task. You can go a lot farther than you realize. And thankfully, I'm okay.
One thing I learned, I did about 80 plus hours at one point. And one thing I learned is that the Guinness Book of World Records will not take any records for staying awake the longest because it's too dangerous.
Oh, there you go. That's insane.
That's interesting.
I think it's like 11 days or something like that's the record.
That is
but
dangerous.
there are I guess Shaolin monks who are known to never sleep, 30 days or just never sleep. I don't know how true that is, obviously, but you can test your limits and learn some things about yourself.
Yeah, really interesting. And that goes back to it, guys. Practice, test out what you can do, test out your gear, practice with your gear, test out your plans, practice with your plans. Like I think everyone has a plan to bug out or strategically relocate at some point when things go sideways. Is it feasible to get to where you're going? And what do you think you'll run into along the way? So this scenario is 5 weeks after a grid down apocalyptic scenario. You need to relocate. What will you encounter?
Well, hopefully you've already taken that route and practiced that route and figured it out beforehand, right? Like you're saying, Paris, once the time to make the decision, your time for preparation is done, right? To try and figure that out on the fly can be dangerous. So hopefully you already know at least where you're going. You made some plans, and you got at least some level of preparedness that way.
Yeah, mapped out a route. Maybe take an inventory of the what you have. What food do you have? What gear do you have? What kind of, how are you going to carry it? Is it going to be backpacks? Do you have a wagon? Do you have some kind of something that you can, because probably 5 weeks after a collapse, you may or may not have any gas left. You may or may not have any vehicles that can do stuff. So you got to map not just map the route, but also mapping certain like resting points and rest stops along the way too, so that you can refuel, maybe take some ammo, some other things like that if you need to be able to, or some other way to defend yourself. You've got to be able to do that.
Well, it's interesting. Utah Mike says 5 weeks is too late. And I would say that's true. I would say that's absolutely true. 2 to 3 days might be too late.
Too late, yeah.
Right. Depending on your situation. Firefly is telling me he's going to go into the woods behind his house. I don't have that good of woods behind my house. Well, it's up a mountain. I would have to climb over a mountain, and it's the most barren, desolate mountains are in Utah, like in Nevada. Like they're just
faces west too, right?
If I lived in like Missouri and had to retreat into the woods or further east, like there's a shot. There's so many things that are wild edibles out there. Here it's just like, oh, I'm screwed. Thank you,
very skilled, yeah.
For the rose and the likes and Firefly. I'm out in the country. Yeah, lucky. That's perfect. Like that's my ideal is I want to move out to the country where I'm already bugged out forever, right? Where I'm already strategically relocated. If you're having to bug out without a plan of where to go, without a place to go, and you're going to hope to rely on somebody else's kindness, you're going to be in a world of hurt because
Yeah,
most people aren't going to take you in because they don't know you, they don't trust you.
You're a refugee at that point. So.
I got a question here that's about bug out locations. It's pretty cool, actually. It might be something to talk about here for a minute. Your bug out location is far off the beaten path, but you feel you need to put something as a barrier to discourage people from heading down your way.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't enough materials to build a physical barrier. It has to be a psychological one that would cause people to turn away just from seeing it. What kind of psychological barrier would you build, and how would it be effective? That might be, freaky to maybe put some Halloween, if you have some Halloween decorations or something to put them up there to freak people out. I mean,
yeah, just someone hanging by a noose, comes to mind.
Oh, right. Snap. Put some real predator bear tracks. You got to learn how to do tracks to be able to do that, but you could do that along the way and say somebody walking in up there would see these bear tracks and say, no, forget it or something. I don't know. What other kinds of things?
Yeah, that definitely takes some thought there.
But you can't make it look over the top either, because like if you're walking down the street and you see this house is okay, that house is okay, yours is the disaster, then the next house is okay. It's like, are they trying to sell me a little too hard?
No, this was a bug out location that's off the beaten path. How do you deter somebody from getting to it?
I thought you were talking about your house. I'm like, how do you deter someone from getting to your house? Not your bug out location.
Psychological barriers and not physical barriers.
Yeah. Make it look like there's no roadway through.
Particularly, you put up a sign, right? You put up a sign, looters will be shot, whatever, that might be effective.
Build a rock altar and then get some blood and put it on there.
Well, easiest thing to do, and this
trespassers will be sacrificed.
Yeah, exactly.
Put up signs for year round that say "bridge out."
Yeah,
bridge out, roadway washed out.
That's a good idea.
Turn around, roadway washed out. There's simple things like that. They're like, oh, I can't get through here. Crap. Okay, we'll go around another way. Then you can get more psychological the closer they get. If they go beyond that, then you can get psychological and you can put traps and stuff to stop them and whatever else you want to. But simplest solution is oftentimes the best.
Trish Lucky says everyone is in fear of voodoo. So put a little voodoo.
Well, no, that's true. You can look back to that movie. The witch movie, what was that?
Blair Witch Project?
Blair Witch Project, yeah, that freaked me out. That would be a pretty good put some type of some kind of magic spell on it.
How do I remember that and not Doctor Strange 2?
You could get, if your solar system's up at your bug out location, you can actually put speakers into the woods and have the wailing, creepy sounds going.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't keep going. I'd be like, nah, screw this. I'm done. I don't know this area. I'm not going in. Fire Life is like, I'm just going into the swamp. We know where to go and deep in the swamp. It's see, that's awesome. He's in eastern North Carolina, so he's got a little more fun over there that he can play with and work with and different things. And it's probably Buna commenting in Facebook saying, Scott, I can show you wild edible plants behind your house. She's the only one I know that besides Tyler White that's legit Utah foraging that can crush it. Utah Mike just said dueling banjos playing on speakers.
Get me out of here.
Oh, what's that movie?
It starts with a D, doesn't it?
I don't know, but there's the movie with they're going down the river. The Departed? No, that's a different movie. They're going down the river, and there's the old creepy banjo player, and people, it's just terrible.
Yeah, that's legit.
That'll slow people down, right, Utah Mike?
Deliverance. That's
there
right.
We go.
I can't even think of the guys that are in it. My brain is fried. I'm like, oh, Burt Reynolds. He was jacked at the time. He's hey, look how strong I am. I'm a bad guy.
He was young in that one.
Can I just say really fast how excited I am to have 10? We have so far we're showing 10 people in our live on between YouTube and Facebook, and we've got 6 people on your live on TikTok. This is the most people we've had live with us at once so far, and I hope it grows from here. This is exciting. Thanks all thank you so much for being on with us and being part of this and participating and making comments. This is really fun. Thanks.
Oh, we love it. You guys, this is why we do the show, to help other people, to get people thinking about different things. But the the better part of it is it gets us thinking, and we have to up our game and understand things a little bit better as well. But then getting to be able to do live streams now, this is exciting because we can actually interact with everybody live while we're doing it instead of like talk about it later. Talking about it later is fun. Let's do that still. But man, this is so much more exciting to do it live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did that for a number of years, huh, Scott? Just trying to survive on live AM radio.
That was crazy times.
That was
I tell
fun.
you'd get the weirdest because there's no filter. You don't pre-screen what they're saying. They would call in, and you're like, "Wait, what? The turkey
is like rolling the dice. Do we answer the phone or do we not answer the phone?"
Right? We've got 3 minutes left. Don't answer the phone. Okay.
Yeah, seriously.
Or we get one guy that would call in every time the same, and he'd be like lost and confused, and talking about you need to make sure your stove in your house has proper fluing, and that you're not going to get backdraft of CO2 in your home and kill everybody. Yeah. Most people won't survive that. I'm like, who's going to survive CO2 poisoning? I don't know anyone that could. But he'd like call every week and try to push somebody's book and website, and I'm like, dude, please stop, for the love. Do we want
to try and do one more, or where do you want to be here, Scott?
Oh my gosh, it's already been about an hour.
Yeah, it's almost an hour.
This has been awesome. We're gonna wrap up. Final thoughts. I think the biggest takeaway from this, and really in all the things that we're doing, first and foremost, it's always better to plan it out, and then practice it, test it out. So plan, then practice, and then adjust your plan. When crap goes sideways, your plan goes out the window most of the time. So you got to have a backup plan as well. You've got to have, Shane and I have always talked about, primary plan, secondary plan, and tertiary plan. You have those three plans in place. You know what to start with. And then if the situation changes, you can't do that anymore, you know what you can go and do next. It gives you alternates that will save your life. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Any final thoughts from Shane or Paris?
I was just going to say, learn to be a critical thinker, learn to be solutions oriented. And these games like this are fun. Coming on podcasts like this are fun. It's good to learn what other people are doing, and then take the best of what everybody's doing, what you're learning from everybody, and then make it your own. Find out your own. Don't do what I'm doing. Don't do what Shane's doing. Don't do what Scott's doing. Take what we do as part of a plan that you can then make your own.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think for me, this is a lot of fun. What I do up here at my property, it's just, I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's become part of my lifestyle. It's not something that, okay, today I'm going to go prep. That's what I'm doing every day. And it's taken a long time for me to just have that mindset, but that's where I'm at. So make it fun. If it's not fun, you're not going to do it.
True. Make it fun, and make it fun for your family so you can keep them doing it with you. My kids are 3 and 5, so trying to get them to do anything prepping related is like, they're like, what? And then they go find their toys. I'm just now getting my daughter to do fire drills. I'm just now getting her to be able to do earthquake drills. And it's like, she pays attention. So wherever you're at, take where you are and just move forward. And if you've been doing this for 100 years, I'm impressed that you're still alive, first of all. But if you've been doing it for 5, 10 years, 15 years, and someone else is coming along and they've only been doing it for a couple of months, don't disparage them. Help them. You're going to have some wisdom that they don't have yet, and it's going to help them and their families in ways you don't understand. So always be planning, always be preparing, always be praying, and be willing to help. You guys have a wonderful night. We'll catch you on the next live.
See you next time.